Ladies and gentlemen, this is Markel Blunt, the Wealth Building Project, your host of the Wealth Building Project podcast, in partnership with the Play for Peace Initiative, and my co-host, the Jeff Venter. We have a treat today. We're having a conversation with Jamari Venter, and we're going to dive right in here and learn a little bit more about Jamari, his background, what's he up to today, and what inspires him to do the things that he's doing in the community. Jamari, if you go ahead and give a 30 seconds to a minute on your background, and then we'll get started.
Absolutely. First of all, thank you for having me. I'm born and raised in Boston. I've been here my whole life. I grew up in, the sports realm, three-sport athlete playing football, basketball, and running track, football always being my main sport. And then, I had the privilege and the opportunity to play Division I at Merrimack College. I was there for 5 years, majored in marketing. And since college, I have been working as a personal trainer.
Very nice. So how long has it been since been how long you been doing being a personal trainer?
I've been out since 3 years now. As soon as I got out of college, my first job was actually working as a varsity football, basketball, and assistant strength coach at my high school at Thayer Academy. And while I was there is when I got my certification in personal training. And since then, that's when I, fully committed to being a personal trainer. So I've been training for about 2 years now.
Nice. So you've always put the work in, right? I mean, when it comes down to, as an athlete, in that regard, talk to me about what inspired you when you talk about football, talk about the other sports you were playing. What was the inspiration that got you started? And then on top of that, how did you, decide to focus in on the specific sports? Let's start with football.
Absolutely. I think at first I think it just starts with having the love for the game. And then, once to continue to, to play and get engraved in it, I think the inspiration just comes from, being the best version of myself. I found that in playing sports and, I found the value in, the things that you learn from it, you know what I mean? Just in regards to yourself and in regards to consistency, discipline, building relationships with people on your team, communication, teamwork, like all of these things that you get from it. And for me, it was like, the more you get into it, it's like, okay, how do I get the best out of this? And how do I use the things that I learned to, to not only be the best version of myself on a team or within the sports aspect, but how do I use those things to also help me in the real world as well?
Oh, that's perfect. And when would you first get started with football, for example? Like how early did you start? What was that inspiration for you when you got into that game?
Absolutely. I think I first touched the football when I was 6 years old. 6 years old for sure. And then it's in regards to like the inspiration, because like I said, I think when you first start off, I think it's just about, you're getting the feel for things, where you stand and kind of like what your skill level is, you're learning things, you develop that love for it. And then like, over time, once you really get engraved in it, now it's like, okay, where is this taking me? Like now what's the inspiration? What's the motivation behind it? And for me, I think it started with being the best version of myself,
Yeah.
not only for myself, but also for those around me as well. So for like when it came to my teammates, my family, and how myself affects other people as well.
It's funny that you say that because I know, your grandfather started the Mattapan Patriots.
Yeah.
And I have to admit this, and I think I told you about this, Jeff, but I had to admit this that when I was a kid, I never played organized football until ninth grade at Lincoln Sudbury, right? And so, but I did try out for the Mattapan Patriots because I had one of my best friends as a kid, a gentleman named Richard Benbury, and one of my cousins, two of my cousins,
Yeah.
Stevie Woods and Jamal Reeves were on that team, and they were trying to convince me to play. And I was a little younger, and so I was like, "Look, like I'm bigger than them, so I didn't want to be on the top team because I was younger than everyone else. But I had to make the weight. I think it was like 112 pounds or something like that, and I didn't make the weight, and so I didn't play. I was like, I'm not playing. If I can't play
Mhm.
with my cousins, I'm not even doing it. So I didn't actually
Mhm.
play organized football until I got to ninth grade, and it was just I was inspired by the traditions that were
Mhm.
left by folks like your dad,
Mhm.
winning Super Bowls and all that type of stuff. So that inspired me to get into the game. Did you play for the Patriots, or how did you what was the first team you started with?
Oh yeah, yeah. I had to start in the family for sure. So Mattapan Patriots was my first team, and then a couple of years in, I actually switched to Brookline Patriots.
Oh,
Funny.
Before you get into that, don't get into that. Because we're going to talk about that. We're going to do a deep dive in it. Now you just reminded me about that situation, man. But listen, I'm sitting here trying to hold back. But we can get a little deeper, Markel, with this football stuff. And but saying this is, I think Jamari wasn't always a football lover. Now he knows what I'm talking about. It was a point where he came to me and he said, "Dad, I think I just want to play basketball."
oh, okay.
Do you remember that? Do you remember that?
Oh yeah, I sure do. I sure
Yeah,
do.
you remember that? Yeah, he was young. He was about maybe seventh or eighth grade, was it?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Because Jamari got good in basketball. He got good. But his situation was he wasn't getting any taller. Jamari has always been a certain height, but he was I mean, this kid was he played basketball like he was a running back. I mean, it was crazy. You know, how he could shoot though, he could dribble. He was a little powerhouse. He's always been the same size. Basically, he just, grew a little, but he would go through the hole and pick his holes like he was picking a hole on in playing football. It was amazing to watch. And he developed a little name for himself around the community. Um, I pretty much turned on the dragon, I would say, when I started Student Athletes Rising. He grew up through my first nonprofit, and it
Okay.
was academics, studying, and also it was basketball. So I created a league, and I pretty much made that decision because I was a football coach for the John D. O'Brien, and I'm like, you know, you know this, Markel, you got to put all your time in it to create a program to be successful. And you're working with 60 kids instead of one or two. And I felt like I was giving up my too much of my time putting on in my all into as a head coach at the O'Brien. So one of the reasons that helped me make a decision to move on from being that high school football coach is my son. I wanted to create a nonprofit where I can still help kids, but
Mhm.
also I can raise my son Jamari so I can work and raise him at the same time. I was kind of cheating, I would say. Um,
Cake you needed too. I get it.
and so, I was able to raise him through sports, through that nonprofit, basically. And he turned into be a pretty good basketball player. And one day he just came to me, man, and he was like, "Dad, I think I want to just focus on basketball." And he doesn't know how I was burning inside. Like, what? He doesn't even know. I kept a poker face, didn't I?
You sure did, because
Yeah, I kept a poker face. But I was more just burning because kids, especially kids, and this is the point I'm trying to get to. Kids at that age don't need to put themselves in a box.
Hmm.
And that's what started happening. Remember, Markel, we played every sport. We was playing soccer, nation ball, on the street, football. Remember that? Football. We were playing basketball, tennis, lacrosse. We were doing everything. And I just feel as though when you play different sports, you're able to pick up certain muscles, certain your mind developing in certain ways, helping you to learn from the different sports. And
Yeah.
then don't make that decision when you're that young. And coaches were starting to do that too. Coaches were starting to take you out of, that sport that you play and wanting you to just focus on the sport that they're coaching. And I
Well,
was
I mean,
experiencing
it
that.
definitely evolved, right? Like today, you see more and more kids today having to focus on that one sport. And with the competition that's going on in and around the communities, right? It's such a business now to work to get your child into college to play, with a scholarship. I mean, it's like hitting the lottery. And so it's a lot of work, a lot that goes into it. So you started to see that. And even, folks now, guys that I played with that, their sons have come through Lincoln, Sudbury or other places and they're like, no, you can't afford to not. There's so many kids, there's so many you don't play with multiple sports. But I will tell you, for me, lacrosse made me a 10 times better football player. Like,
I'm saying,
like without lacrosse, I'm not as fast as I was. The footwork wasn't the same. It just, that was my thing. And as a matter of fact, I probably was better at lacrosse. They just lacrosse didn't pay the bills back then.
right,
Lacrosse didn't
right.
have you on national TV every week back then like football. So football was my first love and I loved it. But my experience with lacrosse, like hands down, was one of the highlights of my life. And the camaraderie, even got guys that I played with or guys that I were watching in college while we were in high school who because our coach Andy Oleski, he had camps, he would bring guys back to coach at camps. So I got a chance to coach at camps and meet guys that I looked up to when
Yep.
I was in high school. And so I mean I love that experience. And so you're right. I don't want to I want everyone to be able to play as much as they can um because you're gaining all the different skills. And I find kids are might be getting hurt a little more now because they're over fatigued on some of
Yeah.
those joints and muscles because they're only just doing that one sport. So
Okay.
I'm with you.
So
Jamar,
so so
yeah,
so
go
to
ahead.
get back to to get back to Jamari, I don't know if you remember, the feeling, but how, what made you make that decision at that point? What was you thinking about when you made that decision where you wanted to just focus on basketball and not football? And then what made you see the light
Mm.
and then you came back into the football world? What was it?
I think it was based on, I guess I would say the success that I was having at that time and basically where my love was at during that season.
Mm,
For me, I thought, my thought process was, yeah, let me just, focus on basketball, put all my time into this, and this is the tool or the driving force that's going to take me somewhere.
mm,
Um, but where I kind of had that, the snap, the click in my head to kind of keep it, to stay with football as well. Um, I think there was two things. I think one of them was like you said, like being on the shorter end of the stick. It was like I gotta be real. I gotta be a little bit more realistic. And I think over time, though, I think football honestly just became. I mean, it took off in regards to where my love was at,
mm,
and I knew that football was gonna definitely be it when over time that's where I wanted to be at. Where even when I was playing basketball, I wanted to be on the football field.
mm.
So I knew that this is where I know I need to be. So that's kind of where that spark came from.
Awesome.
That's good. The what one of the things I loved about the football, and Jeff, you heard me tell the story, but there's no other sport that you have to work all year round, like 355 days of the year, because you only get about 10 days, right? You about 10 games. And so there's just a lot of hard work, determination, a lot of things to overcome, whether it's relationships with coaches. Obviously, if you're where you are in the depth chart, do you have to get into the weight room? Talk to us about adversity, right? Some of the first adversity you might have had on the football field or around the football field and what that meant to you today. Like, talk to us a little bit about that.
Mm, mm. I think to speak specifically to that. I think I think going to college, playing football in college is like where all of that really comes into play.
Hmm.
I was blessed enough to grow up and be in situations where I was naturally the best talent. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Like,
Hmm.
not to say that there isn't adversity. Like you might have been in games and practices where it was just so tough and rigorous that you had to get over it, for sure. But I think growing up and being in positions where I was always one of the best on the team, or in a position where I was starting per se,
Hmm.
nothing beats the adversity that you get when you get to college and when you get to the next level, because all of that goes out the window, right? As we know, and you get
And
there,
everybody's pretty good. Everybody's pretty good.
everybody's a little bit good, you know what I mean? They all they all got their own stories and where they come from, but your mindset has to shift. The atmosphere changes, like the environment is different, like it is, and it's such a culture shock. And you get there, right? And not being the top talent, not being the top dog, it's like you're starting from square one. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And the adversity not only comes from the physical aspect of things, but it comes from the mental aspect of things too. Because of what's expected of you, right? Getting up and being on time to, I mean, to 5 a.m. lifts, to and then having to go to class and then go to, a 12 p.m. lift. Like, you know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
the regimen is different. And that's what I mean by the atmosphere and the environment. Like, so you have to be on point in regards to everything. So the adversity for me was being able to being able to shift my mindset in that and understanding that I'm not the top dog anymore. And that
Mm.
in regards to getting to where it is that I want to be, in regards to, being a starter, in regards to being somebody that my team and people can rely on, I got to put in that next level of work. So everything that might have gotten me to the point of starting in high school or whatever, I got to take a whole different approach to when I get to college, because what got me good isn't what's going to get me great. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
All of that changes. So it's not about just being good in college. You can't just be good. You got to do the things that's going to make you great. And that's that when it comes to that next level of thinking, that next level of how you approach things is
Yeah.
completely different.
That, that I agree that the mindset, I had opportunity, I played at Boston College and my freshman year, we got there, it was 2 weeks of camp. I was like, my goodness, 2 weeks. I didn't know anything was like that. High school, we only had maybe 3 to 5 days of double sessions. And so we had a full 2 weeks. And I remember the first week, I was playing linebacker. I was skinny and tall, lanky, and I could run, but you don't know the playbook yet, and I'm just getting beat up by the big fullbacks and the tight ends, and I have no technique. I don't know what I'm doing. And so I remember sitting in my locker feeling sorry for myself halfway through and thinking like, do I even belong? And I had that sort of defining moment where, it was like, hey, I'm the hometown guy. Like I cannot not do this. I have to be around. I have to fulfill what I need to fulfill. And so I just made that decision. It was all about mindset, and that it didn't matter how many times I was knocked down. It didn't matter how many times that I didn't know the playbook or I got yelled at for being a practice hero. I went all in, and I was asked the week after that, did I want to play or did I want a red shirt? And I said, well, I'd rather play. And so I had an opportunity to play as a freshman at that level. And so I relate that the game is elevated again. Everybody was good. We had guys from Texas and New Jersey and New York and Florida, and so these athletes were better athletes. They were bigger. They played football year round, whereas we were doing other things. So it taught me a ton and
Mhm.
gave me the skills that I carried on into the real world, and I just was always so very thankful for that.
Mhm.
Jeff, you got a question?
Yeah, yeah. I want to take a deeper dive when we're talking about adversity, man. I want to get Jamari talking. And let's start off. Let's break it down from your high school experience all the way up, all the way through when you ended up at Merrimack. Um, you experienced some tough situations. We did because I say you, but as a father, I was right with you and I was hurting with you. Um, you transferred. First of all, you were a medical student, and you went to Lincoln Public Schools, and then from there. you went to Rivers. You transferred and you went to Rivers. They kept you back because they wanted you, I'm sorry, to catch up with the academic part of their program. Um, but then you went through some things when you were at Rivers. You made some poor choices, and we had to withdraw before you were expelled, and that wasn't going to look good on your record. And then from there, you had to get transferred to a Boston public school for half the year. And then from there, through the grace of God, we ended up at their academy. Somebody gave you another chance, and you ended up at there. Talk about that experience that you had to go through.
Yeah, that was probably one of the most humbling experiences I ever had in my life. That is one that will be ingrained in me for the rest of my life for sure.
Mm,
Um, but I love telling that story just because it definitely it shapes a lot of me. And what I was able to learn in that process was so much. Going to Lincoln, I loved my experience at Lincoln and being in Metco. Um, I was blessed enough to be in a town like that. Like everybody is so loving. Like I had no issues with people, teachers, nothing at Lincoln. It was lovely. Um, Going to Rivers was definitely a shock for sure.
mm,
Um, I mean, you get there and it's a college campus, you know what I mean? And like understanding that whole, the atmosphere of ISL is different. Like it's literally like college. Um, so going there, I mean, it was a no-brainer for me. I'm like, man, like the food is great, like the campus is nice. I mean, I don't have to wear a uniform or nothing. Like it's that chill. But like in regards to like how they treat sports, the culture there is crazy. But I love that. I love that, and that's why I wanted to go there.
mm,
Within the first, year and a half or so, for me, the academics was definitely challenging.
mhm,
Um, the culture and the people were also very, very different from what it was I was used to. I think that was the first time I got exposed to, what it was like to be surrounded by, people from just like different, really, really different backgrounds in regards to where they come from. That was very, very shocking to me. And being where, being from where I came from, I really wasn't used to that. And I was trying to navigate so many different things while I was at this school. And in the process of doing that, like you said, I made some very, very poor choices. Choices that really went against who it was I was as a kid and who I am as who I was as a person and what my character really reflected. Which
mhm,
is why when I did things, people would hear that and be like, wow, like this kid did that, like that's insane, like that's not even believable. um when I left Rivers and went to this a BPS school, small school, I mean it looked like, to be very frank, it looked like a jail cell. I'm not even gonna lie. And I mean the culture, the atmosphere, the environment, the everything shifted.
mm.
um I'll go as far as to say that I was almost depressed during this process. Like I wanted to
Sure.
yeah, I wanted to isolate myself from everybody. I didn't want to talk to anybody. It was extremely humbling to like feel like you was at the top and then to just like drop just like in the blink of an eye, how things can just completely change. Um I was fortunate enough though, to have the mindset that I did have because my mindset while I was there was, even though I might have had some, a little bit of whatever you want to call it, anxiety or mixed feelings about the whole situation, I did have the mindset of I got to get out of this situation.
Mhm,
So, I stayed on my P's and Q's. Like, so after school, I got straight A's. I was making sure I was on point with that. Outside of school, what I mean, when it came to my dad, he was saying, make sure that, you get into the gym and that you're either at the field, right? Which wasn't hard for me at all because, what I mean, like that's what I love to do anyway. So, it was go to school. I wasn't really, mixing in with people like that. It was go to school, after school. Um, you either at the field or you at the gym, you're doing your homework. That's it. And that was it for, the next few months of where I had to finish it out. Going into that summer, I was looking into, trying to get back into the ISL school. So I was visiting different places, a couple of them were BB&N, Nobles,
Mhm.
places like that. And nobody wanted to take a chance on me.
And
And
by the
in
way, before you keep going,
that,
they, they promised, Rivers had promised us that because we withdraw, we were gonna, they'll close, they'll give a good recommendation and close the, what do you call it, is, what they won't share, what he did.
Sure.
And that didn't happen. And so we were getting denied. Like BB&N was all, they were like, Jamari Venter's out there. And but then they found out, what happened, and they denied him. But I just wanted to share that. Go ahead, Jamari. I just wanted to share that.
yeah, absolutely. And from that and getting denied from places, that definitely took a little bit of a hit just, mentally because, as I'm going through the summer and I'm working hard, I mean, I'm always at the gym, I'm always on the field, like doing what I'm supposed to be doing with the expectation that I am going to end up somewhere. But as I'm getting denied, I mean, I definitely took a hit a little bit. And it wasn't until, 2 weeks before the school year started. I still didn't get accepted into anywhere. And I'm
Mhm.
thinking I'm going to end up back at this school.
Mhm.
And that happens, my career is over. Like there is no football, there's no basketball, there's none of that. Um, and with a week left in school, I get this call from Thayer, and shit, they accepted me, and it was. I still remember it to this day. I mean, it was me, it was my dad, it was, good friend Antoine, and breaking the news to me. And I just remember sitting there like I couldn't even believe it. And I tell people it was like it's nothing but God because there's just no way I should have ended up back where I was. Like, you know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like given
Mhm.
given the situation, like there was if it was anybody else, you know what I mean? Like it could have gone a very, very different way. But I knew from there, like there was a plan for me. So um, I was definitely grateful for it.
Yeah, I mean that's powerful, man. I understand the pressures even from an academic perspective when you're used to one situation and you go to a school like a Thayer or Rivers or a Fay, all these we had all like through my Metco career, we always had somebody every year from my class that would end up going to one of those schools, and some of them stayed back a year. Same thing, they would stay back a year. But I remember the pressure of going from Boston Public Schools to Sudbury Public Schools and the difference. And you had mentioned something that you had done. I remember doing something similar, like, but it was a public school, but I didn't my mind didn't work fast with math. It just didn't. And so I remember third grade and we're doing, we would have timed multiplication, tables in front of us. And I would because I didn't want, I'm like, I know the answer. It just doesn't come that fast for me. So I was like trying to write them in before the timer hit.
Mhm.
And we ended up becoming one of my best friends. But Matt Williams, who sat next to me, he literally sees me and he raises his hand and dimes me out, tells me he's writing his answers on this before we start. And so I remember how I was embarrassed. I remember how it made me feel. And that, although I was behind academically making that shift, I had to do the work, right? I had to go to summer school several years in a row, while everyone else was out playing or riding their bikes, right? I had to be in the hot building in Boston, going to summer school without air
Oh,
conditioning, and
oh,
which
right,
you can relate to. So, but
right.
that was, and I wanted to quit. I wanted to be like, you know what, I'm done with this. My mom wouldn't let me do it, and
Mhm.
so it's like you talk about the grace of God. We talk about that we don't do this alone,
Mhm.
right? We can have a right mindset. Well, we had to model it somewhere. We had to go through that experience somewhere to just decide, you know what? No, I want better for myself. This is what I have to do. I have to figure it out. But you don't always have that model, right? As you're going through it. So you're gonna have to make mistakes. And I think if you are a good person in your heart and you're, especially in that situation, that somebody will give you a chance, another chance. And that's exactly what happened, which was amazing, right? And so that gave you a much better trajectory in terms of where you wanted to go. Right.
Absolutely.
I think
Absolutely.
the second part, remember part two, was getting into Merrimack. Remember what we had to go through. Jamari, when he was at there, he was striving, he thrived, he was killing it.
Mhm.
He was playing good games. And for me, now we're looking for help for recruiting. We were looking for the coaches
Yeah.
to help us. We were depending on him to do his thing. I even remember going in as a former coach, sitting down with the coach and say, Jeff, what's the plan? Coach Jeff, his name was Jeff. What's the plan? What are we doing? It's senior year. What do you need us to do? What can we do? We gotta get out here. And he was telling me not to worry about it. I got this. That's the thing. ISL, you're like, okay, you're in ISL, you're doing well. The next part of it is scholarship, right? You know what I
Mhm.
mean? That's what we're thinking. Man, boy, that I mean, I felt as though um, it finally came to a time where him and I had to do it all ourselves. We felt as though
Sure.
we didn't get any support from this coach. So we went out looking. And I don't know if Jamari, remembers, man, we were driving to Connecticut and we were going places trying to get talk to put the name out there. And for
Mhm.
me, as I used to be a former coach, but these coaches, they're not going to take my word for it really because I'm just a parent, and so I'm advocating for my son, not
Sure.
as me being a coach. So it's coming differently. You know what I mean? It needed to be the coach should be out there helping out instead of the parent. I should be there to not to be the face, but just to provide the support. But that didn't happen. And you know, it was coming that once again, here we are down the line,
Mhm.
springtime when decisions have to be made, and we didn't
Mhm.
know what to do. So Jamari, just take it from there, man. What was your mindset, and what was you trying to, how was you trying to get over that, get over this?
Yeah. It's funny how similar those situations were because it was almost like the timeline was just as I mean to a T. It was the same exact thing. You know, I was unfortunate, my senior year where up to that point where I was, I was killing and I sprained both of my ankles my
Oh,
senior year and and I was out for the rest of the season. So that definitely hurt, my just in terms of exposure, that definitely hurt a lot. And then after that, I still felt though with what that I have done and things like that, I was absolutely still good enough to have been getting exposure and to have gotten to the next level with a scholarship. And then, like you said, I do remember, speaking to coach and, trying to, get to him and see what he can do on his end to, to kind of help that process. And we just didn't get that, you know, that reciprocated, which definitely hurt my chance. Um, which was definitely tough because it hurt to see like other kids on my team, especially like getting to getting scholarships and like already had like committed to places wherever it may have been. Like I didn't even get to a D3, like a D3 look at by that time. And that definitely hurt me a lot. And after have reaching out and having to go through all that and going to all these different places and trying to, to market myself, my mindset was almost similar to what it was when, I was trying to get back into the ISL school, where it was like, man, like I'm almost like losing a little bit of like the hope and the fire a little bit. But it's just but it's because of where we come from and how and what we've already dealt with getting up to that point where it was like no matter what I'm feeling though, no matter what we are feeling, it's like it's not like we're gonna stop. You know what I mean? Like we're still gonna keep going and we're still gonna keep trying. And I was fortunate enough to have been on Merrimack's radar enough to where we made it was like a last minute visit. We went and saw the campus and met with the coaches and everything like that. Funny enough, they still didn't offer me. That was it was okay. That was all right. But, I ended up, just applying to different schools and I ended up emailing the coach. I was like, hey, listen, I'm gonna be on campus. What would it look like for me to, to come try out for the team?
Mm-hmm.
Um, surely enough, he emails me back and he's like, hey, listen, you're on the team. Don't even worry about it. Boom. Right. So people ask me and they're like, bro, did you walk on? And I'm like, nah, I didn't walk on. I didn't have to try out. Like I was just on the team. Like, I didn't get a scholarship, but he just threw me on the team and that's how it worked out.
Yeah, it's a tough game, recruiting, and I remember my experience with it, and I think today it's even harder because with the transfer portals and all that, like there's just less scholarships for kids coming right out of high school.
Mhm.
That in itself makes it tough. I was very lucky. I had the tradition of Lincoln Sudbury. I had the tradition of Mike Kroll, Joe Sims, as great defensive players. I had the tradition of Greg Shaw, who's 2 years ahead of me, as a great player. And between him and the guy named Dana Cottrell, who was from Billerica, also Metco, they both went to Syracuse. And so Tom Coughlin, who was at BC at the time, was upset that he lost 2 Massachusetts guys to Syracuse. So for me, coming out of my sophomore year in high school, I had the full court press. I mean, they were just everywhere, inviting me all kinds of stuff, and showing up at schools, showing up at games, like they were doing all these things. And so it was easy for me. I just, and I showed up at the camp. So I was very fortunate in that regard. But I hear lots of stories like this where folks just for whatever reason they don't have it, they don't have the money, or they fill up, and it's late in the year, and you just need a chance. I watched Ray Lewis, who I consider one, a top 5 linebacker ever. Um, I watched him not pass his SATs until the summer going in, and he wanted to go to Florida State. He grew up around Florida State near Tallahassee, and ended up obviously going to Miami, and I watched his whole career. He was 2 years ahead of me. I watched all of it, and but that was he didn't know if he was going, like he didn't have an offer, and finally he got through. So I say all this, and I really, it resonates with me when we go back to the adversity that you have to go through in life, right? In general, but it starts to me with things like this. It starts with knowing, hey, here's my vision, here's where I want to go, what I want to do, and I got to fight like hell for it, and I got to build a coalition, and I got to find who cares and who respects, and how can my dad help, and how can my high school coach, right? It's like you got to find it, and because everyone's looking for it. I mean, it is even worse than your generation. I mean, it's a business. It is a business. So,
Crazy.
no, I love that. Would you tell us a little bit about? So, you obviously got through school, you got into it, you played, you walked on. Well, didn't really have to walk on, but you didn't get a scholarship, but you were on the team.
Mhm.
How was it like in terms of when you started? Did you start right away once you got through camp? Like, when did you become a full-time starter? Like, give us a little bit of flavor on the actual college career.
Oh, absolutely not. That first year was tough. Man, like I said, like it's ooh, like how much your mindset has to change. Like
Yeah.
you get there, and I mean, dude, like the even the running back is like 6'2", 230. And second running back is 5'11", like 200. I'm just like, damn, you know what I mean? Because I'm coming in, I'm 5'6", 185, and I'm like, you know what I mean? So that was very humbling in
I know I
itself.
was scared for you, man. I would come to practices and I'm like, oh my God, woo.
Yeah,
All right, let's go.
yeah.
Right.
That was humbling within itself. So well, but I will say this though. I think for me though, like the foundation is already there. So even though these things are coming into my mind or whatever, it's like I know that through everything that has transpired up until college has already like the foundation in regards to what I need to do on my end, controlling what I need to control. That foundation has already been built. So it's like I'm just gonna go in there. I'm gonna do exactly what it is I need to do for myself, right? Which is buy in, what I mean, be a good teammate, making sure that I'm doing the work I need to do, doing that extra work, following the people that I need to follow, getting insight from the people and learning from the people that I need to learn from, being a sponge in regard, you know what I mean? And just in regards to that learning process. Um, and then especially in the weight room, doing what I need to do in the weight room, right?
Mhm.
Because I'm not traveling and going through that year. I'm not traveling, and then I redshirted my first year.
Yep.
Um, so it's making sure that when I get to them Friday lifts, I'm there and I'm handling business and I do what needs to be done, right? And taking it seriously. So with that being said, I think I developed a mindset that was definitely good for that definitely served its purpose for my freshman year. Because by the time I got to the end of the year, man, I mean, I was now 5'6", I was like 195 and I was solid, you know what I mean? So I knew
Mhm.
I was doing what I needed to do.
Putting the
Um,
work in.
putting the work in exactly. And given, those two guys that were the starters, that was their last year. You know what I mean? So the position was right up for grabs for that next year. And it was between me and probably about four or five other backs. And with all that work, I went into spring camp, the spring game, killed it. Went into the camp for that following year, and I ended up getting the starting job. So, it just goes to show
So as a redshirt sophomore, you became the starter,
exactly. Yep,
putting the work in.
just putting the work in exactly.
That's absolutely phenomenal. Um,
Yeah, listen, I tell
yeah,
you, man,
that's
as a as a as
that
a
doesn't
dad,
happen that often.
as a dad, it's nothing like hearing that last name being called over the stadium microphone. Like it's just I don't know. It gave me butterflies. It really did.
Yeah, I no, that's impressive, and it's a great story. And again, obviously the experiences that you had as a student athlete, but that stuff carries on over to the real world, right? And now you've got to get out and produce every day for your paycheck to take care of yourself, take care of family, as you do that. Talk a little bit about the transition
Mhm.
as as you look at, all right, what's my career look like? I studied this, but I got an opportunity. I want to be a business owner. What was the inspiration for you coming out of school to, become, a personal trainer? Obviously, you had to work out until you get proficient and good at that. But what was the catalyst for you to make that jump?
Mhm. Well, to be honest, going through college, I had no idea what I wanted to do. To be,
That's most
I,
of us.
I mean, like I,
Other than play football, if you can play somewhere.
exactly, exactly. To kind of bring it back to the beginning, just on that side of things, like I went into college, I was an exercise science major and I hated it. You know what I mean? Like I couldn't stand it. So I got out of that quick and I went into marketing, but I only chose marketing because I knew that, if all else fails, like I know I could get into something in regards to marketing.
Yeah.
So that was that was kind of my mindset. Now coming coming out of college, like my first thought process was I don't, I really don't want to work a 9 to 5. Like that's not, I felt like that wasn't me. So I was trying to, think of things that, that could kind of go against that and trying to get it and try to get into something else and do things that I know and love. Um, so that's why, I reached out to Thayer, and that was my first point of contact was, well, let me get into coaching because I know that, I love football. So what can I do in that end in regards to where it is that I want to take it as well. But through going through that process and coaching, I realized that um I'm not a coach. You know what I mean? Like that's not this isn't right. And that's okay. Now, how personal training got into the aspect of it was actually was sparked by COVID. Because in COVID, all we had to do, like all we could do was train.
Mhm.
Um, and I mean like that's we ate, sleep, and breathe training. Like that's all we did. And in that process, I was kind of like one of the leaders in the group in that end. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Between me and the group of my buddies that I was living with during that time, and some of the running backs that were still at the school as well, because I spent a lot of my time still at school during COVID. Um, and in that regard of being the leader, in that sense, I could see that, I had a knack for it. You know what I mean? I had a knack for pushing people. I had a knack for getting people better. And also I was also training kids on the field as well. So not just weight room training, but also doing skills training and things like that. So when I first got out of college, um, not only was I coaching, but I was also doing my own skills training, like football skills training as well. When I first got out, and from that, I realized that I love training. Like I can train people. You know what I mean? Like this is
Mhm.
this is something that I could see myself really doing. Just because I saw the impact it had on people. And so from that, I was like, shoot, let me see what personal training is like from that. And so while I was coaching, I went and got my certification. Um, and once I got my certification, I was just working at, a bunch of small gyms. That was kind of like my first, introduction and kind of getting my feet wet with like working with people in the weight room in that sense. And I just kept it going. I mean, I worked at a bunch of different style gyms, big box gyms, small studios. Um, and here I am now, kind of I took a leap to go off on my own and do my own thing,
Mhm.
run my own business, and here I am now.
What's the business called?
The business is called Venter Fitness, keeping the name in it.
Venter Fitness.
Venter
That's good
Fitness.
stuff. Is it primarily virtual nowadays, or are you doing like virtual coaching? Are you doing on-site as well, or a combination of both?
Combination of both for sure, right? So most of it coming from in person. And I may have, I have a good about, a few people online that's actually still in the works, but that most of my services is in person.
In person? Well,
Mhm.
that's great. Well, look, you definitely have a great story to tell. You definitely have developed the great determination to go off and start a business and grow a business. Like anything else, when I consult, business owners on growth, right? It's, you try to find profitable partnership opportunities. You try to find ways to scale, right? And so that your life doesn't automatically just be, you traded a job for now you're just working in your this business, but never having some of the time freedom that I think we look for when we start a business, right? And so I think you're in a great spot, my friend. And I'm really, really happy to hear your story. Where can folks find you if they're interested in training or if they're interested in finding any of the stuff that you write about, any of your social media accounts? We'll add links and stuff when we post this. But where can they find you directly just to connect with you if they want to talk with you about personal training?
Yes, sir. You can find me on Instagram at venter.fitness. Facebook. You could just look up my name, Jamari Venter. And then also on my website, it's venterfitness.com. Yep.
Perfect. Jeff, any last words there for Jamari?
Man, I just want to say, as a father, I'm just very proud of you. It's crazy listening to the story that we just talked about, like through this whole time. And I'm like, wow, you really been through that and you came out the other end. And I'm just proud of you, man. You never gave up. And here we are. You're building and you're doing your thing. And as a father, I'm just proud of you.
Yes, sir. Appreciate that.
Nice. Well, look, everybody, Jamari Venter, it's a pleasure. And like I said, we'll get the links in there at the end when we do it. So everybody, don't forget, go to our YouTube channel, like and subscribe, and make sure for sure you go over to the Play for Peace Initiative website, which is p4pinitiative.org. Again, that's p4pinitiative.org. Subscribe on our website so you can make sure you stay up to date with all that we have going on. We've got a lot of great initiatives throughout the year, as well as our annual event, which has been announced. I believe it is August 2nd and 3rd of 2025. And so we're going to be all there, excited, ready to go, and having a great time connecting with everybody in the community. So we'll sign off. Thank you again, Jamari, Jeff. It's a pleasure, and we'll see you guys next time.
Yes,
Awesome.
sir.